Thank you again. Please like, comment, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up. And you'll find all the links for the guests in the description below.
Good morning, Rich. Lovely to be back with you.
Good morning. It's Thursday, the 29th of January at 6:54 in the morning as I speak. And today we're going to be talking about two of the largest economies in Africa and how they're suffering. And you say because of globalist rule, the very self-same globalist rule that Trump says he wants to put an end to.
So, I wanted to point something out. So we've got Nigeria and South Africa. Nigeria is Africa's largest economy. They vie, South Africa and Nigeria vie between themselves. And the two statistics have come out recently about the actual condition of the economies. And I want to point out that Nigeria and South Africa are the shining stars of globalist neoliberal economic policy. And within South Africa, it's been reported by an organization. It's a very interesting alliance of very high-level lawyers who formed the RSA-CRA, which stands for Rescue South Africa Rights Alliance. And they want to take Cyril Ramaphosa, some of the leading ANC politicians and politicians from other parties to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, for crimes against humanity. And the reason they want to do that is because there are now 8 million children in South Africa, excuse me, who are so malnourished that their growth is stunted. And in Nigeria, the UN have recently reported that there are now 23 million people who are facing severe hunger. The reason they are facing severe hunger is because the rising cost of food. A lot of the aid budget has been cut, and they no longer have access to those NGOs that were feeding them. Same situation in South Africa. You've got so what this policy does, right? Okay, you end up with a 1% of billionaires of a country, Nigeria, South Africa. And in that same country that is not short of food, that is not short of rainwater, that is not short of power, energy, you have figures of children who are on the point of death, suffering from malnutrition, chronic malnutrition. So what does it say about that economic model that we are using? It's shocking. It's outrageous. It's just there it is on your face. This is what this neoliberal economic system does. It enriches a few.
Before you go on, and forgive me for interrupting you, but I want to keep up and I want to expand on your points, right? How can you say it's the economic model? Isn't it to do with rampant corruption, which is endemic in Nigeria and similar in South Africa, and mismanagement? What's it got to do with the economic model? And also, it's a complete tragedy that these two, the richest nations in Africa, should have so many million children on the edge of, well, suffering from malnutrition. But isn't it to do with corruption and mismanagement?
Yes, in part. But, as we discussed before, it's a really very valid point, okay, that you're bringing up. But as we've discussed before, these countries follow the British imperial system, if you want to call it that. They follow the globalist model. So you have policies like in South Africa, whereby the ruling government promote policies of degrowth and deindustrialization. You have a system whereby there is the exact opposite of the American system of political economy, whereby you have policies paid for by a treasury to promote progress, to promote the well-being of the nation, to promote the physical economy. Your most important key strategic elements, energy, water sanitation, infrastructure, education, all the things that are key and vital to a nation. Does that answer that?
Okay, sorry. Yes, it does. Thank you. Please carry on.
I wanted to bring in something about South Africa, okay? I don't think many people are aware that the staple diet of South Africa is maize, and it's maize ground up to a meal, and mealie meal. In South Africa, we call it mealie meal. Now, 80% of, and that is the staple. Most people will be eating that as a primary source of food. Very impoverished families will probably just be relying on that some days for their meal. Now, 80% of that maize grown in South Africa is GMO. That GMO strain, the last time I looked, that GMO strain is the Monsanto strain. It's a Monsanto special. Now, I know there's a grain of rice that's GMO, and that was developed by the Chinese, and they're using it in Central Africa. Burundi are growing a lot of it. I don't know really about the score of whether that is good or not, but it's a Chinese developed GMO. Apparently, it reaches harvest very, very quickly. Sounds good. My mind is open. My mind is open. But when you have a strain that is developed by Monsanto, I cannot see anything good about it at all. And it really worries me, that 80% is GMO. Now, the thing about maize, it was introduced. It was never an original cereal of the region. It was introduced under colonialism. And the thing about maize is, it comes from the Americas, is it's the only grain that is very low in vitamin B. Vitamin B is essential for the immune system. And what the First Nation people did was they put it through a process. It's called nixtamalization. It's something to do with lime, and it processes the corn. Now, I very much doubt that happens in commercial farming. So what they do is at least in South Africa, is they fortify it with vitamins to replace, to add to it, so that it's not just a lump of carbohydrate lacking in vitamin B. So they do that, but it still remains that it is mostly GMO. And I looked for a talk given by actually a former LaRouche person, William Engdahl. He gave an incredible speech to the Vatican. It was very high level. The Vatican wanted to know about GMOs, whether they were safe, whether they were good for human health or not. Oh, by the way, Zimbabwe have banned all GMOs. They reckon that it's a hormone disruptor, and that's what's causing a lot of grief in countries where a lot of GMOs are eaten, with people not knowing what gender they are. So anyway, going back to this talk given by William Engdahl to the Vatican, excellent talk, and he was explaining how GMOs are harmful to every organ in the body, and remember, the brain is an organ. So I think that's important. I wish I could find that speech, but anyway, I couldn't find it. That was one point I wanted to make. Now, the other thing
before you move to on another point, Russia, by the way, doesn't have any GMOs.
No GMOs,
right?
yeah.
So, which is no good for Western multinational corporations like Monsanto. All that fertile land, and they can't grow GMOs on it, and slowly kill off the Russian population. But isn't this just an example of mismanagement and perhaps poor consumer choice or corruption on the part of the South Africans?
I think there's a lack of choice. There's a lack of choice. Urban poverty is a very extreme thing. People are put in cities. They go to cities to find employment. There's nowhere where you can grow some vegetables. There's nowhere where you can supplement your diet with some green vegetables, have some chickens, that kind of thing. Whereas that was possible when you're living in a rural area. Urban poverty it's a very big problem. So getting back to the food industry in South Africa, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are all over it. Then you come also to the fact that South Africa is the highest rate of HIV/AIDS. Now, I wrote an article some years ago in which I connected the two, because you have in Mozambique, you have a very low, Mozambique neighbor South Africa, you have a very low rate of HIV/AIDS. The staple is rice. In South Africa, you have astronomical numbers. Now, I think maybe a subject for another time, it's a lot to talk about. But that whole subject of HIV/AIDS, you know, what I always want to point out is how come in the 80s it was all over. Germany was a big one. America was a big one. The whole thing just like dissipates, except for in Southern Africa and a few other parts of Africa. How come? Why is that? It's so bizarre. Now, one of the things Trump did, he stopped all the aid money, the USAID money to South Africa, and a lot of that was going into HIV/AIDS. So I think that's very, very interesting. You know, what they did with that USAID money was they created an industry. So you have a self-sustaining HIV/AIDS industry where people do not want to look at the truth because their jobs are intertwined with it.
Okay.
I wanted to show you something, okay? Mm-hmm. So going back to the 8 million children whose growth is stunted by malnutrition in South Africa, and the 23 million people facing severe hunger in Nigeria. Okay, so within the system, you have that enrichment of 1%. Who Ramaphosa is a billionaire. Many of those ANC politicians and from other parties are very, very, very wealthy people. The same for Tinubu, the president of Nigeria. He's the second richest man in Nigeria. And I want to point out something, okay? So to demonstrate, I have here a bottle of spring water from a well-known supermarket in the UK. Now, on the back, there's a picture. This is not my favorite picture. There's another picture which is my favorite. But this one shows, and when you buy this spring water from the well-known supermarket, they promise to donate 3p per litre for water projects, for water sanitation, for the digging of wells in Africa. And we've got a picture here of a woman in Malawi, and she says, because she is so happy with this NGO money, you see, she says, before, the only water we had was a dirty open well. Now we have access to clean water. We don't get sick as often, and the money we spent on medication is used for other purposes. Now, my favorite picture, which was on another bottle, is a little African child dressed in rags, and he's got his lips around the end of a rusty iron pipe. He's getting that last little drip of water to drink. Now, what is this stuff? What is this complete nightmare? Is it some kind of poverty porn? What is it? What it is the NGO industry. So you have the One Foundation, okay? So this water project is being driven by the One Foundation. Now, the One Foundation are who created Greta Thunberg. Her father was Havas, a very large French advertising company. And what they did was they mascotted Greta Thunberg to promote the speculative bubble, which is the whole green energy con. And you have, that is, for me, that's a perfect example of the neoliberal system. And then you have this creation of the NGO industry. They come in and they mop up, they're like a Band-Aid, okay? They mop up all the suffering that is created by that system. They come in and they give a little bit of, dig a clean well for a community that haven't got enough money to do whatever they want to do. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure. But are you saying that the NGO industry, USAID, the One Foundation, and others are actually doing harm? Because, I mean, what's the alternative? That this woman in Malawi doesn't get any water, Trump cuts the USAID budget, and then people in South Africa go without, and HIV goes through the roof or something? Isn't that what happens? You know,
why is that woman so impoverished in Malawi? Why is she? She's a tea farmer. She's a tea farmer. Okay. So that whole system does not allow for growth except within the confines and the constructs of a monopoly. So you have a monopoly system of free trade. We talk about British free trade, but what that British free trade system, which we just accept as a normal thing, the globalist model, is not at all free. It's a monopoly. It's a monopoly of a network.
Okay. So now how I do understand it is, for example, instead of like what's happening in Burkina Faso, I mean, you and I did a video of what Ibrahim Traore is doing in Burkina Faso, and soon we're going to have another video about some very exciting developments in that part of the world. Instead of gearing the economy towards increasing the productive capacity of the people within that nation, as the American system of political economy designed by Hamilton directs, you then have local people growing cash crops in exchange for money. So like growing tea, because I bet she doesn't drink a lot of tea, if any at all, right? This woman. So the tea gets exported to service the needs of people in Britain who like to drink a cup of tea, and she gets cash in return, which she then uses to buy essentials, many of which will be imported because the country itself hasn't built the industrial capacity to make the sort of things that will allow for it to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. Have I understood that correctly?
Very much so, and that goes across the board. So for the minerals, the use of the South's minerals, Africa's minerals, as a raw market, the market for raw materials. So all those minerals is not just Africa. Okay, think of Australia. Australia is one of the biggest producers of iron ore. They don't make steel.
Right. So that extra added value happens elsewhere.
Because it's a Commonwealth country.
Right.
It's a Commonwealth country. It's just extraordinary. And that fight for beneficiation, processing of raw minerals, that is a fight that results in civil wars, in the decapitation of good leadership, their assassination, either in person or in character. So yes, that is the fight of fights, the beneficiation and value addition in agriculture, which is exactly what they're doing now in the AES countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger.
Right, right. Okay. And I mean, people should look out for that video when it does come out. We haven't recorded it yet. It will be soon. So you should subscribe, comment, and like. Go on.
So and very hopeful and optimistic, because the whole point of this there's this plasma of negativity, and I see it so much projected against Trump, that no, this isn't the real thing that's happening. This is just another ploy, another trick. And it's a fight against optimism. And what the AES countries are doing, they are giving optimism. It's so vitally important to ignite human creativity.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the growing example of Burkina Faso and Mali and Mauritania coming up following in due course, right? And then comparing that with Nigeria and South Africa, both much, much richer countries, possibly than those three put together. I don't know, I'm making that up, right? But those are being impoverished by the British system of free trade, by the globalists that you and I think, as far as we can tell, that Trump is railing against, as he said so in Davos. And I think what's going to happen is that the conversation about the pervasive perfidy of the City of London is going to break through. It's going to get larger and larger and larger, and more people are going to begin to understand how it's the City of London, through its proxies, that's keeping humanity poor and malnourished through the promotion of organizations like the WEF and NATO and United Nations and European Union, which is the sort of stuff I cover on my channel. So please subscribe, comment, like. PD Lawton will be back, and between now and when I see you next, all the best. Bye-bye.